Of the hundreds of illustrators whose work appeared in the Post, Neysa McMein was one of the most memorable. What makes her exceptional is not only her art, which captured the spirit and fashion of the early 20th century, but also her reputation for independence, charm, wit, and elegance, not to mention the remarkable company she kept. She arrived in New York in 1913 to pursue a career in illustration, and 2 years later sold her first cover to the Post. It appeared on May 13, 1916. Before the year was over, the Post purchased 4 more. Early on, McMein made friends with several important journalists and was invited to join them, along with authors and playwrights who regularly had lunch at New York's Algonquin Hotel. There they would gather to exercise their wit and hone their repartee to a scalpel-sharp edge. Members of this Algonquin Round Table included Alexander Woolcott, Harold Ross, humorist Robert Benchley, Harpo Marx, and critic and humorist Dorothy Parker, an old friend. In those early days, McMein and Parker sometimes worked together to conduct interviews. McMein would do a portrait of a celebrity, while Parker wrote about the subject and the sitting. Even earlier, the two women had traveled to France to entertain the troops during the World War. Parker and her husband lived across the hall from Neysa, and when their marriage broke up, Parker moved in with Neysa for a time. Neysa was good company, which was why her studio attracted the Algonquin wits, as well as any celebrities passing through New York. At the studio, they would be greeted by the artist, who wore a layer of pastel dust on her smock and in her hair. She'd welcome them warmly, then return to her work, more or less ignoring her guests until they departed. Visitors made their way across the room where they would join partiers like Noel Coward, Charlie Chaplin, Yasha Heifetz, H.L. Mencken, H.G. Wells, and George Bernard Shaw. It was in Neysa's studio that George Gershwin played his Rhapsody in Blue before its public premiere. Amid all the partying and visitors, McMein kept producing her fashionable Post covers, 64 of them between 1916 and 1939, and she became one of the highest-paid illustrators in the country. Her portraits capture the fashionable young women of the early 20s, the ones who weren't adopting the flapper look. Though she worked with a wide variety of models, she said she couldn't even draw an egg without a model, critics noted all the faces bore more than a passing resemblance to her own, and they almost all included fashionable hats, which were a passion of McMein's. She remained ambitious throughout her career, knowing that success would give her the freedom to live as she wanted. She believed in freedom for all women, in fact, which was why she was a dedicated suffragette. She could be the most level-headed person among her friends, but she could also give in suddenly to an impulse, like changing her name from Marjorie to Neysa on the advice of a numerologist. In addition to magazine work, McMein also illustrated advertisements, which included this early matronly Betty Crocker. As she grew older, so did her subjects. By the 1940s, she was done with magazine illustration. Publishers had replaced artwork with photography. But she made a lasting impression on illustration and on the people who had met her. Among the many who paid tribute to her talent and character were the doughboys she entertained in the war at a YMCA show. They passed around this poem as a tribute. She's a lady of fame, this Neysa McMein, and she numbers her friends by the host. She's the party that places those wonderful faces on the Saturday Evening Post. This video is brought to you by the Saturday Evening Post Digital Archives. Saturday Evening Post members can explore our 200-year-old archive for only $15 a year. Subscribe today.